Well, our defending Cup champion is getting hot at the right time. And I say that derogatorily because it's hot and it's summertime. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Pocono Raceway, the Tricky Triangle, a track that features 3 different corners that they took from 3 different racetracks. Turn 1, Trenton Speedway. Turn 2, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Turn 3, Milwaukee Mile. What turn 4, the question mark. But yesterday, the Tricky Triangle provided a very interesting, intriguing race with a lot of strategy, which always is a factor here at Pocono. A lot of comers and goers throughout the race. But at the end of the day, our defending Cup champion at the track where he got his first career Cup win came out on top. Let's talk about all that went down at the Tricky Triangle. Number 1, Blaney conquers Pocono. Ryan Blaney, driver the number 12, picks up his second win of the season, winning yesterday's the Great American Getaway 400 at Pocono Raceway, beating out Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman, William Byron, and Joey Logano for the victory. This track has become a pretty significant place for Ryan Blaney because this is the track where he got his first ever Cup win 7 years ago when he drove for the legendary Wood Brothers team, where he had to beat the likes of Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick to win that race. It was a gutsy battle at the very end for Blaney to try to hold him off to get his first career Cup win. But it was a special moment for him to celebrate and get the Wood Brothers the 99th Cup win. And a couple years later, he's now become a Cup champion. And yesterday, how fitting, at the track where he got his first Cup win, he scores career win number 12, which is his car number 12. And Ryan Blaney yesterday was really good up at the front of the field for a lot of the race in the top 5, top 10. They didn't fight for the stage points at all because they already knew they had the win from a few weeks ago at Iowa, which kind of helped them get this momentum going for themselves. They've been close so many times this year, and the 3-wide photo finish at Atlanta just coming up short. Running out of gas coming to the white flag at Gateway. And now, after the win at Iowa, they started to get momentum and confidence on their side. And the last couple of races, 2 top 10s at Nashville and the Chicago Street Course, and yesterday a win. As I mentioned, he was very good yesterday, perhaps one of the best running Ford cars yesterday. There were times where it was Brad Keselowski or Chris Buescher or even Joey Logano for that matter. But the 12 car was very strong at the very end of the race where he was able to stay out and beat everybody off of pit road. Well, he was actually second off pit road for the last pit stop for everybody that felt like they could make the race on fuel if we had cautions, which we did have a fair amount of. But the guy running in the lead at the time off pit road, Kyle Larson, he got caught for speeding on pit road, and that propelled Ryan Blaney up to the front of the pack. And all those restarts, even with all the cautions going on, he still was able to hold control of the race from there on out. He was able to gap the second place car after we got into that last green flag stretch. Nobody could catch him. There were times where when Denny Hamlin was able to get by Alex Bowman for second place, we were thinking with Hamlin's experience, he was going to be able to come and pressure the 12 car for the victory. But that was not the case. Blaney had just a good enough lead over the numbered 11 car that he didn't have to worry about him pressuring him for the victory. Now he's got his second win of the season, building a few more bonus points. And as we get further and further into the summer before the playoffs start, again, Ryan Blaney, he's getting hot at the right time. And I think a time where you need to be at your best. Because as these playoffs get closer and closer, you want to have all the momentum you've got right now. If it's good momentum, you got to carry that into these playoffs. If you're in a little bit of a slump right now, you're not going to be competitive at the start and you're going to struggle. So some of the guys like Ryan Blaney right now, with the wins that he's gotten 2 of the last 5, I guarantee you more momentum's going to shift his way and he's going to start to run up front a lot more and start competing and get more stage wins. They had really good speed yesterday and I can't say enough about him and the 12 team. And it was very special because we got to go NB'd, wired up with them through NBC Sports and USA Network for yesterday's race during stage number 2. We got to listen to his crew chief, Jonathan Hassler, and what they've got going on through strategy. We got to listen to his spotter, Timmy Fedewa, and it was a very cool experience to see the behind-scenes look at the 12 team on pit road throughout the entire stretch of stage number 2. And again, very good race car, very good performance by the 12 team of Ryan Blaney. They can keep this momentum going forward. They will be one of the guys we talk about in the playoffs with all the momentum on their side. So big congrats to Ryan Blaney and the 12 team to get his 12th career win at the track where he got his first career Cup win, driving the number 12 car he's in now. That's a pretty special moment. Number 2, Hamlin comes up short. Denny Hamlin had perhaps the best car yesterday. I mean, Pocono is just his baby. He's been so good at this track ever since he came to the Cup Series. His rookie year, he won the first 2 races, and one of them, the first trip here, He recovered from a flat tire and bringing out a caution, and he came back to win the dang thing. But he won again in the August race, and from there on, Pocono has been so good to him, especially winning on a weekend where he lost his grandmother, which was a very emotional weekend for him, but it was a very special moment. In the last couple of years, he has been the king of Pocono. He's now the winningest driver there out of any driver that's competed at that track. Over the years, it was Bill Elliott, then Jeff Gordon, and now it's Denny Hamlin. It looked like he was in position to get win number 8 yesterday. He had good speed all day long, but on pit road, it kind of really didn't go his way. There were a couple stops where he lost a few positions on pit road. Now, granted, some of those guys that got ahead of him on pit road either took 2 tires, but there were some pit stops where he's ahead of the guys at that point, and of course, he won stage 2. I felt like he was going to be in control of stage number 3 had he gone off pit road ahead of those competitors that he'd been racing for the lead all day long with. But that was not the case. He just got stuck behind some of those guys in the restarts, and all the restarts that kept happening just did not go his way. The bottom lane couldn't get going for a little bit, and then after you take about half a lap around the speedway, he was able to get up to speed and was able to run down Alex Bowman for second place. And I thought, once he cleared Alex Bowman, that there was a chance he could run down Ryan Blaney for the victory because of how much experience he has here and how good his race car was. But that was not the case yesterday. I was kind of shocked because I think Blaney was responding to the lane that Hamlin was running and the speed that he was picking up, so Blaney decided to adjust his car to better himself and vault a little bit of extra time ahead of the 11 car, and that was the case yesterday. Now, this is a good result for the 11 team because they have had speed the last couple of races, but the results have not been there for them. I mean, Nashville, they almost had the win in the bag, but they had the late race caution come out for the 2-car of Austin Hendrick, and then he was in the position where he had restart after restart after restart, and of course he was close on fuel. Ultimately, they had to come in and fuel the car up. I think they were able to get back and finish inside the top 10 or top 15. Not specifically remember where he finished. We did finish on the lead lap, but you wonder what could have been if we didn't have all those cautions or if we didn't have the caution that set up all those overtime restarts. And then the Chicago Street Course last week, I hardly even saw him. He was nowhere to be found. I mean, he was running in the top 20 for a lot of the race at Chicago last week, and he just wasn't up to par. I think the wet weather really hurt his race car. It just was not a good weekend for the 11 team last weekend, so they needed to come and rebound at a track where he's been the most comfortable and the most successful at. He did just that, but just one spot short of where he wanted to be in victory lane. But at least this time he didn't push the boundaries racing against guys, especially Kyle Larson, because last year this is where things kind of got going for as far as him and Larson running into each other and Hamlin coming out of it on the better end versus the 5-car. But anyways, aside from that, a good second place finish for the 11 team to get them more confidence and still remain within the battle for the regular season championship lead. Number 3, solid day at the office for Hendrick Motorsports. All 4 of the cars were in very well yesterday. Not all of them finished inside the top 10, but still a good weekend where the boss man celebrated his 75th birthday. Kicking it off with Alex Bowman, the man who won last week's Chicago Street Course, locking himself in the playoffs. Yesterday, qualified inside the top 10 and ran there for a good portion of the race. They take it off strategy and were running back around 20th to 25th for a little while, but then once the strategy began to cycle through and things went their way, they were able to find themselves back inside the top 10 and inside the top 5 in those last few restarts. I mean, he was trying everything he could on those restarts late in the race to try to get by the 12 car, but he just didn't have enough help on the lane that he was in, particularly on the bottom of the racetrack. He tried everything he could to close down the 12 car, but unfortunately he got passed late by the 11 for second place. Settles for third, but still a good result. To get a good finish coming off of your first win of the season and getting the win last week to lock you in the playoffs, again, building momentum, building consistency, and that's what the 48 team is doing right now. They can keep this up and build a few more solid results and maybe get a possible few more wins down the road. Could help them going into the playoffs, but a nice job by the 48 team. Then William Byron, who the last couple of races we're wondering, where is he? Aside from the runner-up finish at Iowa, the last couple of races had not gone William Byron's way. Not finishing well, they weren't even running well in a couple of those races. Last week at the Chicago Street Course, I didn't hear much of his name at all, even though he was able to get a 9th place finish out of it. I didn't see much of Byron. I mean, it seems like the summer is when Hendrick Motorsports in general tends to struggle. But of course, Bowman got the win last week. He got that top 3 yesterday. And Byron was able to come away with a 4th place. He wasn't the best Hendrick car, but he was still solid, especially after starting on the front row. And a good result like that can get his consistency back and build some momentum and give the team a little bit of confidence. I feel like they've lost their confidence since the early part of the season where they looked like the best Hendrick car, maybe aside from Kyle Larson or even Chase Elliott. But yesterday's finish, I think, was a good boost for the 24 team. They can keep this up going down the road before the playoffs. they're going to be in pretty good shape. So good run by the 24 team. Then we got Chase Elliott, who was able to come away with a 9th place finish in car number 9 yesterday. But the 9th place finish doesn't really tell a story. Chase Elliott actually probably had the best car of the Hendrick camp yesterday. That car was a rocket ship. He started in the top 15, fell back a little bit, then he picked himself up, and at the start of stage 2, what they did to that race car, that thing was on rails. That thing was flying, passing guys on the restarts. He had some amazing restarts yesterday, getting through everything that was around him, whether it was 3 wide, 4 wide. He just did everything yesterday to getting out of that traffic and passing guys like crazy, like an extra jetpack on his car. But he was flying. He was able to get some good stage points yesterday. 5th in stage 1, 2nd place in stage 2 behind Denny Hamlin. And on the pit stop with about 50 laps to go, and we had a caution where we felt like everybody could make it on fuel from there as long as they were able to save and get a few more cautions. He looked like he was going to be in prime position to maybe get a second win of the season. But unfortunately, that's where things went downhill as he, along with a few others, including his teammate, which I'll talk about in a moment, they got nabbed for speeding on pit road. And I thought at that time, all they could try to do was try to rebound and get back in the top 10 because at that point, the win was completely out of the question for the 9 team. And it sucks because that car was so strong. It was capable enough of keeping up with Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and everybody else that had been running up front for the times they were up there yesterday. It just sucked to see that happen to the 9 team. And he was kind of questionable about that speeding on pit road. But despite all that, he was actually able to rebound. He actually dodged a couple of big wrecks that we had in the final stage. He was just behind it. He got through it without incident. He was on the inside of a wreck, was able to pass through with no incident whatsoever, and he was able to get back up to 9th place. I know they probably would have wanted a better finish, but after not finishing in the top 10 the last 3 races, and of course last week was the first time they finished outside the top 20 at all this year, this helps their average finish by getting a top 10 and getting some momentum back. And they're now the leader in the regular season championship. Even though it's starting to tighten up a little bit, having the lead right now, getting into next week, has got to feel good for the 9 team. So a great recovery from the penalty to get a top 10. And then we have Kyle Larson, who was good at times yesterday. Not great, but definitely solid enough to finish inside the top 10. Like Bowman and others, they were off strategy, had to work their way back up. It took them a while, but they got themselves inside the lead on the final pit stop with 50 laps to go. It felt like they were going to be in prime position to win. But like his teammate Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson also was nabbed for speeding in Section 7, and he was pretty... Let's say he did not like the penalty, thinking he did nothing wrong in that section. He didn't think he went over the speed limit, even though there's no speedometers in these cars. They're tachometers. You got to follow your RPM to determine possibly the speed that you think you're doing on pit road. That's, perfectly liable with the NASCAR rulebook as far as how fast you go down pit road versus how slow you are going. Well, you want to be not going fast, obviously, but the 5 car, like the 9 car, tried to rebound the best he could. He was able to come in a few other times, take 4 tires, miss some of those wrecks, but all he could do was get back up to 13th place. It's a solid result, given everything that happened, but and didn't have that speeding penalty. Probably could have finished in the top 5. It could have all the Hendrick cars inside the top 10 at the end of the day yesterday, but unfortunately, you can't always get what you want, or things don't go your way. But despite that, it was a good day in general for the Hendrick camp. Number 4, Busch versus LaJoie. Late in the race, we had perhaps the most controversial moment of the day. On a restart where everybody's barreling down into turn number 1, side by side, 3, 4, 5 wide, Kyle Busch, who was having a miserable day in general because the car wasn't running well, they had to replace the oil cooler pre-race. That's why they had to start at the rear of the field and weren't as competitive. They found themselves inside the top 15 with about 45 laps to go. But behind him, Corey LaJoie tries to make the move to the inside. Kyle cuts him off, and then LaJoie seemingly comes back on the track, and he gets into the left rear of Kyle Busch, turning Kyle Busch around into the pack and collecting Ryan Preece, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., AJ Allmendinger, Harrison Burton, and others. A few of those cars, particularly the 16 of Allmendinger and the 77 of Carson Hocevar and LaJoie, got out of there with no incident whatsoever. However, Kyle Busch, once again, when it rains, it pours. I feel like I maybe need to change something out from that instead of saying it all the time. But he got caught up in the wreck, and unfortunately his day was over. And a few other guys, unfortunately, were taken out. And Kyle, obviously, in his post-race, at his interview after the wreck, pretty much, didn't lose his cool. He just pretty much decided to thank all of his sponsors and all the support and everything, because it's a good thing to say that and not say what you really want to say. He's kind of, I think, ran through his head about what he should say versus what he shouldn't say, or else he was going to get in trouble speaking in front of the media. But he just remained calm, just thanked his sponsors. But I could tell under that skin of his, he's not happy with LaJoie. But that's not where it gets controversial. Where it gets controversial is when you look at the video replay on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, or YouTube. You could tell LaJoie, after getting blocked down by the 8 car, he comes back up and he turned him. He got in the left rear of the 8 car. But on the radio, they said he wrecked himself. And the crew's like, screw him. We're worried about ourselves. No, LaJoie, you got into him. That's your fault. That's not his fault. Now, did he block you before you got into contact with him? Yeah, but you're supposed to do that. But LaJoie knew that he wasn't going to go 5 wide into turn 1, where at the bottom part, the apron of the racetrack, you're not going to have enough grip to maintain position, and you lose spots and maybe cause an even bigger wreck where you're running. What you decide to do is you come back up the track and you just clip the 8 car and send him around and turn him into the wall and pretty much ruining everybody else that didn't deserve to be a part of that day that was collected in it, of course. That's on Corey LaJoie. That is not on Kyle Busch. That is on Corey LaJoie for that act right there. That is unacceptable. But that just goes to show the frustration that some of these guys have been having that have not had the season that they were looking for. Of course, early in the week, if you hadn't heard, Rodney Childers is coming to Spire next year to be the crew chief for Corey LaJoie. But after an act like that, you're going to have to learn to tone his racing aggression down a little bit, because he took it too far with that incident yesterday with 45 to go. It hurt Kyle Busch's race and hurt everybody else running around that was part of that. It should not have happened. That is unacceptable. It looks bad on Corey LaJoie and the Spire team, saying he hooked himself, he turned himself. No, you wrecked him. Plain and simple. You don't agree with me? Fine. But that's what it showed yesterday. That's all I got to say about it. That was just really uncalled for what happened at the end there. And number 5, playoff bubble drama. While that race was happening yesterday, of course, there's still the battle to get into the top 16 when it comes to points. And yesterday, a couple of drivers did not have the results they were looking for, but a few of them did. For the guys that didn't have a great day included Ross Chastain and our pole sitter Ty Gibbs. For Ross Chastain, he didn't really run in the top 10 at all yesterday. I didn't see the one car for 1 second running up front where he's probably supposed to be for the caliber of driver that he is and the equipment that he's running. Trackhouse Racing Team is a solid race team and should be running up towards the front competing for wins, but that has not been the case as of late. And yesterday, Ross Chastain, for crazy reason, he lost the rear end of the car off of turn 3, backed it into the wall, and then hit the wall again, generating a caution and knocked him out of the race. He finished next to last yesterday and only leaves Pocono with 1 point. That is not good for him. And now he finds himself on the bubble in case somebody else behind him wins a race. Ross Chastain will find himself outside the playoff cutoff line. He's only ahead of Bubba Wallace by 27 points. That is not a lot of points to be comfortable with sitting above. You got to learn to try to get some of those points back and learn to finish these races well and maybe get to victory late. But that result yesterday really hurt the one team. And then late in the race, the 54 of Ty Gibbs, who had a good car at the beginning, being on the pole, but then he slipped to the back. He really wasn't a race-winning car. They were probably a top 10 car at best. They were one of the cars that got nabbed for speeding as well late in the going with Larson, Chase Elliott, and Daniel Suarez. Now, 3 of those 4 are already in the playoffs because of wins. Ty Gibbs is not in on wins. And lately, he has not been having really the results he would hope for. Although last weekend he did finish inside the top 5, finishing runner 3rd place to Alex Bowman and behind Tyler Reddick at Chicago Street Course. But yesterday, after that penalty, he never recovered. He was trying to fight his way back. And then on the restart into turn 1, his motor blew up. And it's rare that you see engine failures with this next-gen car. Unfortunately, it happened to Ty Gibbs, and he plummeted and finished deep in the field. But because there were a good amount of cars already out of the race because of some of the wrecks that we had, he actually finished inside the top 30. But still, it's not a good result for you when you lose all those points. And you're now, you're still relatively above the cutoff line. But let's say somebody else wins. You're pushed down another spot, and you're closer to the guy you're ahead of in points in Chris Buescher, who had a top 15 finish yesterday. So it's not good for the 54 team. They're going to have to find a way to get some of that consistency and not have these issues happen. Now, obviously, the engine issue, they couldn't have expected that. But the speeding penalty, not a good look on you. Now, to the positive side, Bubba Wallace. Now, they didn't qualify well after they had a good car in practice this weekend. He started down in the 29th spot, and he had to work all day, not just getting track position, but work on the car. He was not happy in the car, but the 23 team kept digging and digging and digging until they finally got some adjustments right for him, and he was able to get himself inside the top 15 late. And then at the checkered flag, he finished in 10th place. And with the Chastain problems, again, he now finds himself 27 points below the cutoff line. So there's still a chance for Bubba Wallace to point his way in. But that's only until we get another winner. And if it's somebody that's behind Bubba in points, it's not going to help him at all. It's going to be it's going to be a massive problem for him unless if we get repeat winners from here on out, or we get a guy that's already in the top 16 on points, maybe gets a win, and it's not Ross Chastain, then he could still find a way to point his way in if he continues to have some good results, and the one car or anybody else ahead of him in points tends to struggle and maybe loses a lot of points. But a good recovery for Bubba Wallace after the bad qualifying effort to get himself inside the top 10 at the end of the day, while the other two did not fare much with bad results. So now that we're done racing in the Tricky Triangle, we are off to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and this time we are not going road course racing there. We are going back to the 4-turn oval configuration again, folks. It's been since 2020 that we ran on the oval at the Brickyard 400. And one of the reasons why, because people complain, oh, the racing sucks. Everybody, like, for a couple laps, they run together, then they spread out. It's not that fun. Well, we did the experiment with the road course, and the first race, aside from the curbing coming up, I felt like was a good race. The last couple of years, had been a little bit hectic with all those wrecks at turn 1 for these guys, and then they had to move the restart zone and then remove stage brakes last year, and it was a tame race with only one caution. After that, we were green the rest of the way and didn't cause a break because of the stages. Eliminate that format, even though it's back this year. But this year we are going back to oval racing, and we've seen the next gen car help out a lot of these, intermediate tracks, the 1.5 and 2 mile tracks. Now, Indianapolis is a 2.5 mile track, but it's not a super speedway track. It's a flat track, even though there's some banking in the corners. It's a flat track where hopefully we'll improve the racing on this 2.5 mile configuration with this car. We've seen how it's done for the intermediates and the 2 mile tracks. Let's see how it does for Indianapolis. I think we could be in for a very interesting race next Sunday. It's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be, of course, on NBC, and it'll be the last race until the 2-week break, because then NBC's got to cover the Olympics over in France, and NASCAR teams will get a little bit of rest to kind of recoup and regroup before they get ready for the last stretch of regular season races before we get ready for the playoffs. So who will come out on top next week and kiss the bricks? Will it be a former Brickyard 400 winner? Are there any? Yes, Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch. They have, of course, won the Brickyard 400 before. Can Martin Truex Jr. add that race to his name before he retires at the end of the year? Or will somebody new, like a Kyle Larson, a Chase Elliott, or Ryan Blaney as a Cup champion, could he add the Brickyard 400 to his racing resume? We'll see what happens. We'll see who plays the right strategy and has a good race car next weekend to come out top as a champion at the Brickyard. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Of course, I'm offset, as you could tell. I'm in a different setting. I'm on vacation, getting some relaxation time. But of course, talking NASCAR never stops. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll be back in my normal post next week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Ryan Blaney and the 12 team on their impressive win at Pocono yesterday. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!